Spooky South Coast presents The Week in Weird with paranormal news correspondent Melody Knapp.
And good evening, Melody. How are you?
Good evening. I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
We are spooktacular, and we were talking earlier that we've had a couple of weeks now without the Week in Weird, but that's all right because you're going to make it really weird for us tonight.
Of course I am. So pretty much, to start it off, I was actually sucked into that horrible hole of a clickbait ad. Opening of this museum sparked paranormal activity, written by Kelly McClure. But it goes on to talk about, all the different haunted artifacts that are in there and how once they opened the museum, all these weird things started happening, like one of the dolls that they have there would move and, be found in different spots. And there's an oil lamp that actually, if you touch it, you get ill, violently ill. And just things like that. Now, what really made me want to talk about this article with everyone is, what do we think about haunted artifacts? Because we always, are dealing with, haunted places and ghosts and apparitions, but what are the odds that an entity can literally attach itself into an object and then cause things to happen thereon after?
Well, I can tell you that there's a fantastic book on the subject called Haunted Objects.
I've heard of
Stories of Ghosts on Your Shelf, written by Chris Balzano and Tim Weisberg, that I think everybody should go out and read. But Stephanie,
perfect plug.
Yes.
You have a lot of experience, Stephanie, with haunted items.
I do, actually. I do. I've experienced it quite a few times. A lot of the times when people ask me to come to their house and figure out what's going on and why all of a sudden these crazy things are happening, my first question is usually, what's new? What did you bring in? What antiques? What did you pick it up at a yard sale? And usually almost, I want to say 95% of the time, it's something that just came into the house that's causing it. So haunted objects are a real thing. People don't realize it.
I mean, I've got a bunch of them out in my shed that people have given me and said, hey, I got to get rid of this thing. It's causing me problems. And
you're not right, my friend.
No, there's nothing wrong with it. I don't bring them into the house.
Too close for comfort.
There's one item that I don't think it's in the book because I think we found out about it afterwards. Chris and I actually filmed a TV pilot or a sizzle reel for a show on haunted objects. And a friend of ours had this chair that was just wreaking havoc on his life. And it was, I've never seen an object change somebody as much as it did him when he was around this chair. And he was talking about how he would just sit in the dark for hours and all these bad thoughts would just come into his head and it was affecting his life and everything. And he had it actually locked up in his parents' shop. And he brought us to go check it out. And he was afraid to go near it. And he didn't want us to go near it. And we actually saw when he was around it, his face would change. His mood would change. And he just looked and acted different. And I asked him, I said, do you want us to take the chair with us? And he said, oh, no. I have to be the person to protect the rest of the world from this chair. So
wow.
I still want to get my hands on it because I think it would look awesome on the stage for an evening of ghost stories and New England legends. But
absolutely.
We'll carry around a haunted chair with us. We're not afraid.
But no, this museum, a place that has a collection of all these different powerful objects. I would want to question, was there not activity before the grand opening? I understand that was the whole point of the clickbait, to get you kind of to go through of it. But it was also the second kind of part of this is, what happens when you gather all of these items into one space? You know what I mean?
Right. Well, we've seen it happen with the Warrens. We've seen it happen with John Zaffis, and now Greg and Dana Newkirk with the Traveling Museum. These energies collect. All right. Well, do you have another story for us?
I certainly do. All right. So my second one is something that I think everyone's going to have a pretty big opinion on, and it was titled "My Problem with EMF Readers." It was a video put out by Bill Highland, which I can kind of go over with you guys. In the video, he goes over, the whole point of what an EMF detector does, But he brings up a very good point about false positives, because we're using this tool to detect, I guess you could say, paranormal activity. But you've got to think about all the outside things that we have no control over that can affect us. Like, it's really good when going to determine if there's like a fear cage, in a room that's causing people to feel uneasy and things like that. But I mean, it's not a tool that I utilize as much as other people do, just because I kind of find it something that can produce the false positives.
Well,
So,
the biggest problem
what are your thoughts on it, guys?
the biggest problem on investigations is cell phones. I mean, everybody's using their cell phones, and everybody's putting apps on their cell phones for investigation, and that's causing all these false positives. So you really need to be aware of that when you're utilizing these devices. And it's okay. Listen, we tell everybody put your phone in airplane mode. It's okay if somebody doesn't, but you just have to make sure that when something's going off, that it's not their cell phone that's causing it. I would never tell somebody at an event, listen, you can't have your cell phone active, knowing that your kids are home alone while you're here.
Right.
You got to have a little bit of leeway for that, but at the same time, it can't be, that you're just wandering around like texting all night or playing around on your phone and causing all these false positives. So that's just the number one thing I think people have to be aware of. That, and the fact that just because you get a fluctuation doesn't mean that it's paranormal. It's until it's repeatable and it's happening in different ways.
Well, originally the EMF meter was used to screen out, like what you're saying, the fear cage and other electromagnetic things. Wasn't used as a means of detection. It was used as a means of answering what was around that could be causing it. Just like a flashlight would be, used to work around in the dark. Now people are using them as a means of communication.
Right. I mean, forgive my ignorance, Moniz. It's been a long time. Were you at the Braintree Town Hall investigation?
No.
Okay. Well, that was a perfect example of a place where EMF was a problem. People were saying that they would walk down in the Braintree Town Hall in Braintree, Massachusetts. People would walk down the stairs into the basement. And they said as soon as they walked down into that staircase, they felt like somebody was there, somebody was watching them, somebody was touching them. And so we went down there. Actually, you weren't there, but I had borrowed your tri-field EMF detector.
Okay.
And so I had that down there. And as soon as I go down the staircase, this thing's spiking like crazy. I mean, it's up around 14. And I'm like, when do you ever see it? And I remember I called you and I said, has this thing ever gone up this high? You said it shouldn't be. And we happened to just walk around, try and figure it out. Well, as soon as we went around the corner into the actual basement, all of the old electrical panels.
Yeah, all the sub.
It was all original 1940s wiring from when the building was built. Nothing had been replaced.
Nothing shielded.
All the wires exposed. And it was so thick you could feel it, you could sense it, and that's what people were feeling. And I said, listen, if you want that problem to go away, you got to replace all this electrical stuff, which you probably should do anyway, because you're going to have a fire or something with the way that it goes. So yeah, I mean, it's certainly it's a tool to have in the toolbox, absolutely. All right, do you have one more story for us?
All right, guys. Yeah, last not least, I wanted to kind of discuss the Week in Weird Flash. I also read an article written on the Week in Weird article about the Anderson Hotel in Kentucky. So originally written by Dana Matthews, rewritten in the Inquisitor by Bill Turner, just to give proper news. But for those who don't know, the Anderson Hotel was actually recently closed to paranormal investigations after Week in Weird actually went and investigated. And there are claims of and video of an investigator being bitten, like actual teeth marks on them, in live fashion. So I guess for this one, it's what are our views on places closing? I mean, like, we're there to investigate, and I understand the danger, and that's something that can really shock people. But if someone's willing to put themselves in that situation, like, where do we draw the line?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is whoever owns it makes the decisions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can make all the promises you want, sign all the waivers you want, buy all the extra insurance you want. If that person isn't comfortable with people coming in, they're not going to be comfortable with them coming in. I mean, a perfect example that you might not be aware of, Melody, and some of the listeners might not be aware of, there was a location in Rhode Island called the Ladd School, where people were constantly breaking in. It was an old abandoned school, and people were constantly breaking in there and investigating it. It's since been torn down, I believe.
Yes.
And but this was a huge problem. Well, some kids went in there one night. They broke in, and one of the kids happened to spill a container all over his crotch of acid.
Ooh.
Awesome.
And basically the acid ate away at his junk. And
oh my goodness.
so he sued Rhode Island. He sued the state of Rhode Island because it was a state school and state property. He sued the state. And I want to say the number was $20 million. That's what's sticking out in my head for some reason. He sued the state and he won.
Oh my goodness.
So I could be wrong on the fact. He might not have actually, it might have been a settlement deal or something or other. But the fact is, it was determined that they could be held responsible because they let this stuff lay out, even though they broke in to get there. So that's a lot of the problems that a lot of people have. And I run into this trying to find locations for TV shows. People are like, we would have no problem if it was just you guys coming in, but then you're going to put it on television and then everybody wants to come in. And
absolutely, yeah.
You can't control, a location all the time. Stephanie, you've been following this whole thing with me since the last Fort Tabor event where they've been having problems with people trying to sneak in.
They've had problems for a long time. They've had problems at our events. When Ghost Hunters went, they actually had to have 3 people arrested because they absolutely refused to leave Batter Milliken, even though they knew they were trespassing. They didn't care. The cops came in. They still put up a fight.
Now it's on television. Now It's been on Ghost Hunters, and it just makes the situation worse. So, the bottom line is whoever owns it makes the decisions. And I've said this in the past. Nobody, just because you own a place that's haunted, you don't owe it to anybody to let people come in and investigate. That's just the reality of it. I know people that are out there in the field saying, hey, I give up my weekends all the time and spend my own money to do this. And, I'm doing this for altruistic purposes and somebody should see that and let me in and do it. But the bottom line is they own it. They don't have to do anything. I'm sure that there's doctors out there that, would want to get into places where people are sick, but it doesn't mean that you have to let them in just because they're a doctor. And the same thing for paranormal researchers. Just my 2 cents. All right. Well, thank you very much, Melody, for the news. And
right.
should we let people know about?
Always.
Should we let people know about the new news idea that we have before? Let's plug this a little bit. It was Matt Costa and I talking last week. Matt came up with this idea. We want to make it so that the Week in Weird. We've been doing it for a long time, where either one of us would read the story, or now we have Melody tell us the story, and then we comment on it. And listen, we're not nearly as funny as and informative and inquisitive as some of our listeners are. So what we're going to do is, we post these stories all week long on Facebook, on Twitter. Matt and Chris do a great job of sharing all these stories throughout the week. So what we want you to do is we want you to follow us on social media, read the stories, and give us your opinions and your thoughts. And so starting next week with the Week in Weird, when Melody reads the stories, they'll be the stories that were put out there on social media. And then instead of us commenting on it, she's going to read some of the best comments that listeners had about it. So that way you don't have to listen to me make a dumb, penis joke. You can make a dumb penis joke yourself. And then Melody will read it on the air. And then you make Melody say penis on the radio, which will work out great for everybody. Except for Melody.
Oh my goodness.
She's speechless.
You know what? I'm on board. I'm excited.
All right, well, but that's usually where my mind goes for the joke, so I'm sure the listeners will be the same way. But let's do so. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter @SpookySC, and you'll be able to see those stories and comment on them. Share your thoughts, share your questions. It doesn't always have to be something smart-ass, and we will incorporate that into the Week in Weird. Sound good to you, Melody?
Sounds good to me. I hope it sounds good to everyone else, too.
All right, well, you have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure that you check us out every Saturday night live at 10 p.m. Make sure to hit that subscribe button too.